Yo, 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 what is going on, golf fans? It's your boy, Gsluke, here with our round 3 live stream for the Masters. Here in this prop preview, going to get you ready for all of your exposure tomorrow over there in Underdog and Prize Picks, over there from the matchup markets as well, over there on the sports books. Any questions that you have, feel free to go ahead and throw those down into chat. But hopefully, your weekend is about to be epic. Hopefully, your Friday is treating you guys nicely. We got a little bit of whiskey in the cup. It is some Blantons this time around. I know my guy Joseph down there in chat, also a fellow Blanton's enthusiast, is probably loving that himself. So cheers to everyone out there. Hopefully you're having a fantastic Friday and are ready to talk some golf over here for rounds 3 and 4. So here in this video, I'm going to break down all of the essential info that you need. So that'll include some averages out there from today's round, also a weather report over there for moving day. And then afterwards is where we're going to go through all of our exposure. It'll be some Underdog and Prize Pick stuff, also a few matchups over there. And yeah, I knew you'd like the Blantons over there. And speaking of, it's pretty damn smooth. It is strong, but it's going to be a little bit easier to stomach than that 55% single barrel that we had the other day. So cheers to everyone out there. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already, whether you're part of the live crew, replay crew. Also, throw a comment down there if you're on replay crew, and also say hi if you're getting into the live chat. I don't know if you guys saw there. I have a really healthy pour there too. So if we have a long live stream, we're going to have plenty of liquid to go around. So let's start with these averages where you can see them from today, which actually got a lot easier, which was not what I was expecting. And it highlights a really important factor at the Masters. And that, of course, would be your pin locations. And when you have greens as severe as what you have around here, pin locations are always going to be the main narrative when it comes to that scoring. And because they're not posting them well ahead of the time, we're going to have no idea for the pins for round number 3. So at least to my knowledge, they haven't posted them on any of the social medias yet, which means tomorrow morning, if you wake up around 7 a.m., you are going to get the information if they're consistent like rounds 1 and 2. But without having those pin locations, I'm not going to be going all in on my exposure. Now, we're still going to try and find some value out here tonight, especially over there from the birdie market, because I do expect there to be some pretty accessible pins in a few cases. But with how easy it was out there for round number 2, I do think that there's a chance that they make it a lot harder tomorrow. The winds weren't nearly as strong as what a lot of the weather forecasts were calling for, which is why I didn't get out of hand scoring wise in the afternoon. And if it was going to blow 30 miles an hour, like a few of the weather models were calling for, it could have played to like a +2 scoring average today, right? For all we would have known out there. But because it didn't go out there and do that, it looks like it was set up a lot easier than it should have been. So for round number 3, there's a chance they try and make up for that because of their mistake out there today, which means the birdie average, which by the way, I wanted to look into this because a lot of times we hear about moving day being like by far the easiest setup. But if you look at the Masters over the last 5 years, which, by the way I did this is over here on the Bet the Number website. They have these hole props over here that you can bring up for the Masters. I looked at the last 5 years data, and I looked at it for all 4 rounds. The birdie average was the highest out there in round number 1. 2 was round number 3, but it was by like 0.01, like 1/100th of a birdie per round. There was hardly any difference out there between the 4 round sample sizes that I was looking at. So I say all of that to say that just because it's moving day doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to set it up a whole bunch easier than what it was for today, because in a lot of cases you had pins in low spots, a lot of ones where you had backstops to go out there and hit the ball close. And for tomorrow, moving day, a lot of times they do give you that kind of setup, but it wouldn't surprise me at all that now that they have most of your older guys, your Champions Tour players, your past champions at this event out of the field, that they're going to ramp up the difficulty quite a bit. So we'll have to see with the pin locations tomorrow morning, but weather-wise, it looks absolutely ideal. You've got sub 10 miles an hour of winds the entire day, and then from the wind gust perspective, nothing over 10 to about 12 to 14 miles an hour, a little bit closer towards the late afternoon. So they're starting around 9:50 a.m. local. It is going to be twosomes off of hole number 1. And there is Tom Kim that is going off by himself, so he'll be the one guy without a partner for tomorrow. But even if you have like the late tee times where it might start to dry up a little bit and the winds do kick up just a little bit out there towards the afternoon, conditions are going to be significantly calmer than today. So that's why I do think they might use a slightly harder pin setup. They're still going to have a few of the usual moving day pins around here that do make for a lot of scoring like you have at this sort of course, but they also add in a few more difficult pin locations as well. So what I'm expecting, and this is just projections, right? I honestly don't have a crystal ball, right? I don't know for sure. I'm not Nostradamus and exactly what's going to happen. But I think the bogey average is going to go up to about like 3.8, maybe even 3.9 per round, like what you had over there in round number 1. And then the birdie average, I think it might stay about the same. Maybe it goes slightly down, which I know sounds counterintuitive, but when you're at the weekend of a major, at the Masters, right, Augusta National, are they treated a little bit differently? I think there's a chance that it stays the same or even goes down just a little bit. So in terms of your stroke average, I have it closer to like a 1 over par scoring average, which isn't as close to what you had for day number 1, which was closer to 1.8 strokes over par. But I do think it's going to be a little bit harder than what you had for today. So that's just my personal take on it. Obviously, you don't have to agree with it. And I'm not always right, when it comes to my course lean either. But I will just say that with the sub-air systems that they have available, they can try and suck out some of that moisture overnight that you had from last night's rain. They probably tried to do as much as they could out there before lock today, but you could see that with the easier scoring, that rain definitely had an effect on the golf course. But now that they have an entire night now, right, no rain forecasted over there in Augusta tonight, to go out there and try and dry up the golf course even more, that combined with some harder pin locations is where it could play more difficult. So it's within the range of outcomes, maybe not a for sure outcome or anything like that, but that's how I'm looking at the slate as a whole. So when you look at these boards, they are kind of accounting for the moving day setup and trying to make it a little bit easier. So when you look at the birdie lines, like they have more guys up at 4 birdies as opposed to 3.5 like today. The guys like Akshay, Jordan Spieth were at 3.5 birdies on the board. And then the guys that they have at 3.5 birdies weren't even on the board yesterday. And, if they would have been on the board, probably would have been posted at 3 birdies instead of 3.5. So it looks like they kind of think it's going to play easier, but I'm not so sure about that. So I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a fade board. Underdog pretty much copy and pasted across it. Was also looking at the sportsbook odds. They're pretty much, in most cases, at 99.9% of them, the same out here as what you have on the sportsbook. So the sportsbooks seem to think it's going to play a little bit easier, which means my take is against the grain, right? It is not what these sportsbook think is what's going to happen based on what they have with these projections. Like guys like Jordan's at minus 0.5, even guys like Tom Kim, right? He's at even par, which based on his form this week, he's about an average player in this kind of field. That means that they're projecting for around an even par scoring average. And I guess just to give you guys all the data possible, Data Golf's a site that goes out there and projects for every single round too. They also have it projected around an even par scoring average. So all of these boards seem to imply that sort of idea. And I guess I'm the only one out here that seems to think it might play a whole stroke over par. So if I'm going to go out there and find anything myself, I think fades are going to be easy for me to go out there and mix in. But I'm not against entering some positive stance plays. Like if we can find somebody here at 72.5 that I think is a decent play towards the middle to bottom end of the board, like I could see myself taking an under, right, to shoot even par or better. But I was mostly trying to look for before we got on live stream here with some like overs on birdies at 3.5 birdies. But like I mentioned a second ago, like it's all these like middle to lower tier players, like guys that weren't even on the board yesterday at that 3.5 mark. They still have Justin Rose there, but he's your leader, so he's dealing with some of that pressure. Like if you're ever looking to take an over at that kind of number, like a Patrick Reed, and it's kind of embarrassing to say, but like he's the one that stands out. Like the course history, he's not really an aggressive or high birdie percentage player to begin with. But compared to the other guys that they have at that 3.5 number, like maybe a Jaeger, maybe a Grazerman, because they are aggressive high birdie percentage players. But the issue with a Jaeger and a Grazerman there is that they hardly have played around Augusta National, right? They don't have that experience of a player like a Patrick Reed. And I think the birdie average is going to be about like 3.25 per round. If I had to give you just one concrete number for what I think it's going to be, it would be about 3.25 per round. That means that guys like Jaeger and Grazerman would have to gain about 0.75 birdies to the field to cover this, which I think is asking quite a bit. So these boards in general kind of have me perplexed because I don't agree with really any of the pricing that we have out here. And if I was going to do anything heavy at this point, and I think really the best thing to do would be to wait for the pin locations, kind of get a good sense for what we're going to get with conditions. And if it is easy, right, if they're going to have a lot of bowl pin locations, not a lot of tricky ones on some of those like longer par fours, then maybe you do take some unders on strokes and some overs on birdies at these kind of projections. But if they have any of the tricky pins out there, like let's say that holes like, just to go through some of the holes that we have out there, let me bring up masters.com. 1 second here, guys. Like they might have some easy par 5 pins. This is kind of what I'm thinking for the pin locations for tomorrow, is that they're going to give us some like easy par 5 pins, but then like on some of the harder holes that you have on the golf course, I think that they're going to give us some sledgehammer pins, ones that are going to play to maybe even like a whole half a stroke over par average. So just to go through these, like hole 2's a par, usually the pin there is relatively straightforward, right? When you get to hole 5 is like the hardest that you have on the entire golf course. They might put that on one of those crests that you have at hole number 5, where even if you hit the green, the 3-putt percentage is like 30 or 40% because of how difficult hole number 5 is. Hole 6, like you could put it up on that top shelf. They did that for round number 1, right? Like if they do that with the pins, that would be like a third of a stroke difference compared to what you had for today. Hole 9, right? They had it in a low spot today, but if you put it on that back shelf, that's like a third of a stroke difference right there. Hole 15, like it was in a low spot again, like maybe they make that one a little bit more difficult, or even tuck it towards the water like they had for round number 1. There's a lot of little changes they can make with the setup to neutralize the effect of the weather being a little bit calmer. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to go out there and want to enter a ton of props tonight, and why I think if you're going to be doing your due diligence, you really want to go out there and get some heavy exposure, the best thing to do would be to either look at the pins and react to them, right? If you have enough expertise to go out there and do so, that's the best thing you can do, because you can react before play even starts and before the books even have any chance at all to go out there and react to it. Or even if you don't have that kind of expertise, that's totally fine, right? Most of you probably don't know how to completely break down a pin sheet, but you can look at some of the stat averages as they come in, right? So kind of like the sports books will do as well, is when you have some of the first players getting out there in the golf course, you'll get a sense for what the conditions are looking like. And, for some of the guys going off later, and it is 2 sums off of 1. So you're going to have a long range of tee times from the first to the last tee time. You can adjust out there for those mid to later starters. So I think that's where the biggest edge is going to come in out there in your exposure. And looking at these plays, I told you fades was probably where the main value is going to be. And I do want to see where they have some of these sportsbook lines. Draftkings didn't have a round score posted before, but maybe they have it up now. They do. So they were hiding it over here on this right tab. Let me see if Fanduel has their stuff posted too, because they're, at least for my money, the most accurate of the big 3 when it comes to these sort of odds. They don't have their stuff posted over there quite yet, but we do have it over here on Caesars William Hill. So we'll start with DraftKings Caesars William Hill to go out there and start. And what I want to check on is I want to see what they have Hideki at. They're at 71. Kind of feels like 71's a little bit low for somebody like Hideki, but I do want to see where these sportsbook have them as well. And based on what I was looking at earlier, yeah, they were mostly in agreement. So you can see here in Hideki, right, he's at 71.5 and minus 130 under. So with the slight little juice in that direction, right, that's why they put him down there at 71. Now, Hideki sets up well stat-wise for tomorrow. I was mostly just looking at him to see the kind of pricing that we have available. But, let me look at Morikawa. He's probably, minus 140 under, right? He's a slightly better player than what you have over there. If I could spell his name correctly, it'd be easier to find. Yeah, minus 140 at 70.5, like I was expecting. So he is the other direction, and then minus 140. Let me see what else we have on here. So Fleetwood, maybe he's somebody we can look at. I want to look at Minwoo there at 71.5. Let's see. So he's minus 130 for the over at that sort of number. So he's plus EV value already, right? And on top of that, I think it's going to play even harder than what the sports books think, right? So maybe that's not the worst idea to go out there and play. Let me look at Matt Fitzpatrick. Matty Fitz has not had the best form lately, and he's also not a player that I really like that much. Unfortunately, no line to go out there and compare to. Aaron Rye, maybe a Justin Thomas. I don't particularly want to fade Justin Thomas, but let's look at Aaron Rye, JT at least for comparison. So Rye is at 72.5 and minus 140 under, right? Hence why he's at 72 on the books. And then, JT's at 71.5 and also juiced a little bit under minus 150 for the under, which is why they're at those even money sort of props. So like I imagined before, a lot of the reasons why they're at these even numbers is because they've been adjusted for the sportsbook odds. So there's not going to be a ton of quote unquote plus EV value that you can find on these sort of spots. I think the biggest edge that you can find on this kind of slate when, Yeah, Underdog's the same way, right? They have their multipliers out there on each prop. They pretty much only use the sportsbook odds to go out there and make their board. The biggest edge you can find on these sort of slates is when you think it's going to play way easier or way harder than what these sites think. And you guys already know my take on it, right? I think it's going to be a little bit harder than what they're pricing for. So one of my buddies, Dinger Bets, by the way, he has an under over here on John Rahm at 4.5 birdies. Like, I'm not against that at all. Like, if I think it's going to be a little bit, stingier when it comes to the scoring, like, that would be a lean I'm looking at. And it might even be plus EV. I didn't look at the odds over there for John Rahm, but let's see. Let's go over here onto DraftKings and type in John Rahm. So I guess he's closer to even money at that sort of number. Let's look at Rory. So he's minus 120 over. And let's look at Scotty. He was also at that same sort of number. So, like, of all the plays we've looked at, like, maybe Scotty, if you're a plus EV better, like, would make kind of sense at minus 125 there. But some of these guys at like 3.5 birdies, like, especially some of your lower tier guys, like, let's look at a Nick Taylor. Like, maybe he's a guy at 3.5 that might be juiced towards the under. The fades are what I'm the most excited about going out there and entering. So Nick Taylor, you can see, is minus 120 for the under. So that's not really value, I would say. Let's look at Davis Riley. He feels like one of the weaker players that they have at 3.5. Then who else do we have on here? So yeah, Riley's probably the weakest one that I've seen so far. Let's go ahead and just line shop that one real quick. He's at minus 135 under, so you're getting slightly better value there, right? This is a major championship. Riley, he's not a terrible birdie maker by any means, but this is just a much stronger field than what he's used to going out there and playing in. Like, these would be the kind of props, at least for my first look at this board, that I'd be looking to enter. And it's not exciting, right? It's not always great to go like, oh, wow, you're just betting against players hoping they don't do well. But based on these strokes and birdie lines, which is what we've gone through to this point, that's what I'm seeing on a lot of these books. So let's see what we've got down there. You've got the S bottle to complete the set. Oh, to go out there and get the whole blend set. Dude, if I get an S, I'll send it your way, Joseph. I don't have one right now, but yeah, I've got 4 of the letters right now, so I'm working my way up to that. Dude, that's the prop life, man. Is it prop spin off by like 1 every day? That's because golf and the way they have it, especially with like strokes and stuff like that, you get a lot more 0.5 hooks than any other sport, and it is infinitely more tilting than these other sports, right? Because today, for example, I had Justin Rose, right? He lost by 0.5. The first round, I forget who we took, James, but it was the same way, right? We lost by 0.5. I think it was Jordan Spieth, right? At 9.5 fairways. It is so much more hurtful when you lose by 0.5 than when it's like an NFL prop and you lose by like 30, 40 yards. But it means you're a lot closer to going out there and hitting too. So yeah, man, I'm used to it, right? I've been doing this for like 4 years at this point. So I kind of know the drill, but yeah, dude, that's golf betting for you. It's a 4-letter word for a reason, right? Like all the other cuss words out there. Going on, Nate the Great, welcome on in. We got Phil down there as well. It says you got your $200 entries that made the 6 of 6. Dude, that's great. The 6 of 6 rate, I believe, was like 10-12% this week. So yeah, if you're running with 2 of those in that, that's well better than the average. What's going on? Austin the Boss, my guy Austin down there. By the way, I'd say the only person down there in chat that I actually know in real life, at least as of right now. Maybe somebody else will file in here at some point, like my brother or one of my buddies. You got David, who says, do we try and fade Rose again? Man, I was thinking about it, David. The issue I have is without seeing these pin locations, and we're not going to have them until tomorrow morning. It's like, what if they have them super easy? Like that is a possibility. Like they may just say like, fuck it. You know what? We don't care about scoring. We don't care if it goes out there and plays easier than what we thought before. Just set it up like you normally would have for a moving day. That's at least a possibility. I don't think it's likely, but that would be the reason against fading him. Rahm has made 1 birdie through 2 rounds, and it was a hole out. Crazy's at 4.5. One thing I'll say about that, Mark, is that if you're looking at the 2-round sample size, it does look pretty wild, but you have to consider that he is one of the highest birdie percentage players in the world right now. On the Live Tour, he's number 1 by like half a birdie per round over second place. So he's normally it's over 5 birdies per round, by the way, that he makes over there in the Live Tour. And today he had a bogey-free round, right? He still shot -1. That was still 1.7 strokes better than the field average today. So it's not like he's playing terribly. So they kind of forgive and forget when it comes to those kind of sample sizes. That's why they'll post them at 4.5 birdies. They'll say, screw the first few rounds, right? That's only at 36 holes. What has he done this year? And they'll take that 1.5, 2 birdies gained per round that he averages on live, and they'll give him to that here. So, Scotty, right? That's why he's at 4.5. Rory too, right? He's had multiple wins this year, maybe the hottest player that you have in professional golf. They forgive and forget rather quickly. And that's what I do with my projections. It's not because the sportsbook do that I go out there and incorporate it myself. It's because that's kind of how the stats work, right? Regression to the mean is a thing. That's why in Showdown, like, I'm always looking for the guys that are hitting the ball well, but that maybe weren't putting or chipping out there to the standards, because that's the first thing to come around. So yeah, John Rahm, by the way, if he starts putting, watch out. I mean, he can make a bunch of birdies. And the thing about those guys, too, that are so far back, they've got nothing to lose. I mean, John Rahm doesn't care about finishing in 30th place. The only thing John Rahm cares about is finishing in the top 10 or top 5. So expect guys like him, Jordan Spieth, other guys that just hardly made it through the cut line to be especially aggressive out there tomorrow. Sleeper has Rose at 71.5. That seems low. Yeah, so a lot of the guys over there are low. So even the birdie lines they have posted are also a little bit high over there. So on Sleeper, fades are the way to go about that. You said you play all yours. It happens for sure, James. You said, you sure you're going after the 2-ball matchups later? I am, for sure. And you said, what do I think about DeChambeau versus Rose? Well, we'll have to take a look at the odds, Noah, which I guess I'll take a peek here real quickly before we finish going through the prop boards and stuff. But between those two, I mean, Rose, I feel like is due for some regression, but I also feel like Bryson DeChambeau is due to come back down to earth a little bit too. So let's go to the 2 balls. He'll be one of the ones towards the bottom because he's one of the last groups out. So he's -190 versus Rose. Yeah, and I never bet like -190. So like maybe it's a parlay piece for you that you're mixing in at that sort of number. But I wouldn't bet Justin Rose just because he's played over his head the last few rounds. He's I hate to say that he's like due to come back down to earth, but statistically is due for a little bit of regression. Had Moneyline versus Connor. So yeah, if we're looking at some matchups, shit, I wish I would have seen that before he went to the other tab there, but I'll go back to it. So yeah, Haddon versus Connors. Well, what are the odds on that? Because he's not the 2-ball. You'll have to let me know what the odds are on those two, because I don't want to bring up my phone here in the live stream. A lot of good value on Bryson for the over on 4 birdies. A lot of sites have them at 4.5. So let's see what they have for the sportsbook odds. And for some reason, my browser here is frozen. There it goes. Now it wants to cooperate on us. So let's go over here to the rounds props. Go over here to birdies or better. He's probably juiced under. That would be my guess. Yeah, he's -145 for the under. So just because they have him at 4.5 doesn't necessarily make him value, because it depends on the kind of odds that you have available. Now, I do want to double check Caesars William Hill, because they also have birdie or better lines posted, and they have him at -140 under. So also at that same sort of number. That's why he's posted at 4 on those kind of books, because the juice is in that kind of direction. Thoughts on DeChambeau versus Aubert for rivals? So yeah, that's the strokes rivals, and that's just a straight up head-to-head between those two. I would go with Aubert, man. Aubert, he played well here last year. I guess same thing with DeChambeau, but DeChambeau had a much rockier course history before last year, and Aubert is playing better with the stats right now, so I would side towards that. I don't think there's a massive edge between those two. Like, I would not bet that, Jack. Like, that's not a big enough edge for me to go out there and play it, but I would lean towards Aubert. When do I get to the DFS plays? Well, if you're looking for showdown stuff, Duncan, that is over there on the Ship It Nation site. This is the prop live stream. So this is for Underdog and Prize Picks plays. This is over there for matchups and that sort of thing as well. If you're looking for Draftkings stuff, you're at the wrong live stream. So for that, check out the Ship It Nation YouTube channel. I did that live stream a little bit earlier on this evening. So apologize, right, if you thought this was thought it was for DFS, but like it says in the title, this is the prop live stream. Are you crazy for wanting to play Haddon tomorrow? No. So he will have some ownership, Jamari. So that's the one kind of argument against him. And by the way, Duncan, I will say, if you have any like questions for DFS, I'll go over those. But you're not going to have like a whole segment on DFS here, right? This is the prop live stream. We'll go over any questions though, like we have here with Jamari. I do like Haddon because of the ball striking stats, but he will be popular. So I'm mostly using him in single entry, some of like my smaller field GPP lineups. Large field GPP, if you're going to use a Terrell Haddon, you're going to have to offset it with another player in your lineup. So it's minus 110 for those sort of players. Okay, so good to know. So straight up money line, I guess, is what you meant there with the ML. My bad. So yeah, Haddon versus Connors. Give me Terrell Haddon. And then Berger versus Wyndham. Berger Wyndham is close to a toss-up, I would say. That's pretty 50-50 between those two players. First one, though, Haddon versus Connors. Haddon's been a little bit more ball striking heavy this week. That's pretty close to a bet for me. And of course, Duncan, I got you. Yeah, some people, I know I do a lot of content, so it gets kind of convoluted sometimes. The reason why we do it separately is just so that you're not like watching a live stream and getting the wrong content. So yeah, by the way, anyone out there, right? If you're looking for like the showdown stuff for DraftKings and whatnot, there is like a whole live stream that I've done for that already. So don't be sitting through this one thinking that we're doing that. This is the prop side of things for sure. What percentage is the 6 of 6 and 5 of 6? Okay, I'll bring it up for you. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but luckily we don't have to know that off the top of my head. By the way, if you don't already follow Cut Sweats over here on Twitter, this is a site that you guys should for sure add to your repertoire. Over here on Twitter for free, they post of 6 of 6 rates. And what you'll see is that the 6 of 6 rate was close to about 7, maybe 7.5% over there in most contests. And then the 5 of 6 rate was a little bit over 20% in every contest, and up to even like 25 to 28% over there in a few different contests. So depends on which one you were entering, right? You have the legend down there at the bottom, but Cut Sweats will give you your personal metrics over there with 6 of 6 rate, and it'll look at all the contests that you're entering as well, or at least most of them over there on DraftKings. All the big ones for sure. They cover from that perspective. So check out Cut Sweats for all of that. I am not sponsored by them, so I don't have any sort of promo code to go ahead and give you guys for a discount, but they are a must-have out there for any player when they're going out there and getting any sort of exposure. Now, if you're more of a casual player, maybe you just follow them on Twitter out there for these sort of charts. But if you're playing a lot of volume, anything over, let's say like $1,000 a week, this subscription is worth it from the analytics angle alone. Like, not only do they give you the cut line sweats, the numbers over here, like on these charts, but you can look at your own stuff, kind of get an idea of like where you went wrong with some players that were missing the cut. And they give you the simulated win percentages over there too. So it's crazy. I just did a whole like promo over here for the cut sweats guys. And they aren't even paying me to do so. So, hey, if you're Nelson, hey, if you see this, hit me up if you want to add me to that sort of promo program. Any matchups on DraftKings that stand out? So I want to finish going through the prop stuff before we look at all the matchups. But yeah, we're going to have a whole segment on that. So yeah, there'll probably be a few that stick out here in a few. So opinion on Spieth at 10.5 fairways. 10.5 fairways, so that's a little bit over today's average. Spieth has been a pretty good driver of the golf ball lately. The one thing I'd say, James, is that round one, I took him for the over at 9.5. But that was at 9.5, right? That was an entire fairway lower. I'm not sure that he's got an edge on him at 10.5 because I think his projection should probably be at 10.5, maybe 10, right? If he was struggling off the tee, you could lean over. Like, I don't think that's the worst bet that you could take, but I just don't think that there's as much of an advantage there as, what we had earlier this week. A little Haddon on, a little sprinkle, I should say, on Haddon at 22.5 to 1. Okay, I'm not against that. Do I think that Ludwig bounces back and goes for an under at 71.5? So let's link these two together. Jamari's asking about what happened with Aubert. And then we have a question about, the 71.5 line. So let's knock out two birds with one stone right here. So round number 2, he gained around the green and then lost a bunch over there in approach. Didn't have the worst round today. I mean, I've seen a lot worse from some people out there, right? Shooting plus... it's on round 1 right now. Shooting +1 isn't the worst thing. And a lot of that was because he bogeyed the last 2 holes. Aubert, I think definitely has bounce back potential in him, especially because he's shown like a knack for going low at this golf course, right? Not even just round 1 this year, but also him getting into contention in his first ever start at this event last year. I think that he's a 71.5. So if I think the scoring average is going to be +1, so that's 73 strokes, you'd have to gain about 2 strokes to the field to go under that sort of line.
I don't know if that's value, man, because I project him around 1.5, maybe like 1.75 shots gained per round in this sort of field. That's where I have his baseline on my model. I was looking at it yesterday, so that's how I know that off the top of my head. But yeah, like 1.75 strokes per round is, I believe, exactly where I had him, which means like on average, right, he's going to go actually over that line a little bit more than he's going under. So I'd stay away from that one personally, Mark, out there in terms of that prop line. But I do think that he's a good bounce back candidate for DFS because I have Scotty Rory at over 25% ownership, and guys like Aubert, especially guys like John Rahm, Justin Thomas, a lot lower owned than those other guys up top. But let's see what we have for a prop slip here. So I know we were looking at a few of these fades before. The Davis Riley one is for sure my favorite. The Minwoo one, right, that is minus 130 for its over as well. So that is still a decent lean that I think I'm going to consider entering. But trying to find a pairing for this, we're either going to have to find like a birdie or better matchup to go out there and try and enter, or looking at some of these other categories. So we haven't quite gone through some of these other categories yet. 3.5 bogeys or worse. That is a little bit under today's average. Then you get guys like John Rahm at 2.5. That feels rather aggressive, even on somebody like John Rahm that is a top tier player. And then you have like 3.5 bogeys on somebody like a Steven Yeager. That feels like that could be a potential over spot. So just look at the sportsbook lines. They have a lot of these guys at 3.5 and juiced under. The added caveat being that these are some of your better players. So it kind of makes sense why they would be juiced out there towards the under. And in general, they think conditions are going to be a little bit easier. But what you'll see with your Wyndham Clark here is that he's at 3.5 and he's minus 140 out there towards the over. So, you know, a lot of these sort of players that they have up here aren't posted over there on those sports books. Now, I'm not sure if Draftkings has them up. So Draftkings is posting some of these bogey lines now. So let's see what they have for a selection. So yeah, not a massive selection. So a lot of these guys that they have posted here, they aren't going to have over here on DraftKings. Let me see what they have Rose at. So Rose is at 3.5 and actually juiced a little bit under. So that's not really what we're looking for there. But guys like, who was I looking at there? Like a Fitzpatrick, a JJ Spawn, a Steven Yeager, they're at 3.5 bogeys or worse. Like these are the kind of guys I'd be looking at out there for an over on bogeys. And that doesn't really help our case with the slip out here too much, just because, right, we're trying to go out there and find a positive stance play to go out there and make this a 3x combination. But just to show you the value over here in pjtour.com. So one second, I do want to bring up the extra tab here before I go ahead and share my screen. And this year, I think he's been a little bit better at avoiding some of the bogeys. But last year, even with a win, he had his best year ever professionally over there on the PGA Tour. He still wasn't the best bogey avoider in the world. So if we go to 2024, look up Steven Yeager's ranking out here in this category. He was number 132 out there in 2024. And I am curious what it looks like this year because, like I said, I think it was a little bit better out there for Steven Yeager. But even so, he's number 60 out there in Tour. And in a top tier field like this, right, he's in the bottom 20 of the guys that you have in this kind of field. So at that 3.5 mark, if you're going to take any sort of prop at that kind of number, it would be an over in my opinion, because I think the bogey average is going to go up compared to round number 2. Probably like 3.75 per round, 3.8 per round would be my best guess out there in that category, which means somebody like Steven Yeager, right, only has to make 0.2 more than the average to go over that sort of line. And I'm not even sure what the shots gained metrics look like on a Steven Yeager, but let's go ahead and check that out there for our last confirmation. But he lost off the tee, lost on approach today. And the only thing he gained in out there for round number 2 was his around the green play. So not the best stat-wise. Actually makes this an even better play than what we were looking at before. And I guess just to confirm, yeah, he doesn't have a line over here in books, I don't believe. Yeah, so nothing over here on the DraftKings side. But like you'll see, Wyndham is minus 130 there. They don't have a whole bunch of guys posted at that 3.5 mark. But these are elite tier players, and some of them are even close to even money, like you have for Justin Rose. So somebody that just hardly made the cut, like a Yeager, probably a little bit more value out there towards that side. Let's look at a few of these other categories. So fairway lines, just to go back to the averages, right, was a hair under 10.5 per round. So going through the lines that are available, they look rather similar to what you had for the round 2 board. Maybe slightly higher because guys like Zach Johnson, I believe, were at 10.5 and are now over there at 11.5 over here on these books. And yeah, like JT was at 9.5. Now he's up there at 10. There's a few other guys I've seen that also seem to be bumped out there by 0.5. if you're going to take anyone for an over, you want to find somebody at 9.5 or 10 fairways as a slightly above average accuracy driver. Now, going through this, it looks like they have it priced rather well. Like the one that kind of stands out to me would be the Scotty Scheffler one, because Scotty Scheffler is an above average accuracy driver, and average today just a little bit under 10.5. He would kind of be a no-brainer, I would say, over there at that 10 number. But Matt McCarty, I also believe he's relatively accurate, and I need to bring up another tab over here for Data Golf. My apologies, a lot of tabs, I guess, are bringing up over here for this research. But good old Matt McCarty, what I like over here in Data Golf is that they show this accuracy gained. And look at this right category. Like he's a pretty accurate driver of the golf ball. We know that he's had the form out there this week, and he's over there at 10 fairways, which is below the average out there from today. So yeah, of everything that we've seen so far in this category, my favorite for sure would be this McCarty one, because he's an accurate driver that is projected below the field average. And I want to look at Justin Rose too, right? Justin Rose is also at that 10 number. I know he's a decently accurate driver, but I don't know if he's like elite in the category. Yeah, so right, not nearly as elite, right, is what you had over there with Matt McCarty. That might be our positive stance play that we end up going with, because like he's a more accurate driver than Aubert. He's a more accurate driver than like pretty much everyone else that we're looking at over here. What I want to do is go over here to the stats tab. I'll bring up some of the off the tee stats to go ahead and compare. And let's look at Matt McCarty this year. So he's number 17 in all the tour in driving accuracy, which of players that are actually in this field, I believe that's top 5 of all of those sort of players. Let's look at Michael Kim, I guess. Michael Kim does hit quite a few fairways. And then I guess Jason Day would be the other one I want to deep dive, because Jason Day was over there at 9.5, and he doesn't feel like the worst driver of the golf ball. So yeah, let's start with Jason Day. So Jason Day, 126. Okay, I guess I was super far off on that one. And then who was the other one I wanted to look at? 1 second here, guys. I'll remember it as soon as I see it over here. I guess not. Maybe I won't remember it as soon as I see it over here. But we want to try and find like overplays, right? Positive stance plays, like I was saying out there before. And based on what we've gone through, I do think McCarty is like by far the best value. So let's keep him in this slip for sure. And then I guess we got to choose between this under on Davis Riley birdies or the over on Steven Yeager bogeys or worse. And the best way for us to kind of figure this out is like going back to these averages. I think birdie average is probably still going to be like 3.25 per round. Bogey average, I could see going up to maybe 4 per round if they use a lot of those really difficult pin locations, which is why maybe going with the Steven Yeager fade might be a better idea, just because I could see them just like screwing over these players on some of the harder holes that they have out there. But before we settle on those two, I guess, let's look at greens regulation, right? We haven't done our full due diligence in every single category quite yet. And average today, just to refresh our memories over there, was 10.98 per round. So we're going over to trying to line shop. Remember, it was just under 11 per round today. So Tom Kim is an early starter. So maybe he could be a look over there, that 10.5 mark. I do want to see where he ranks out there for this year, though. So I don't think he's as high as what we'd expect, just because he's been a little bit of a slow starter here in 2025. So yeah, there at number 65 is average at best in this kind of field. So 10.5 on some scrubs. Like Post and Yeager are always the most precise players on approach. Denny McCarthy is a decent player on approach, especially over the last few years. He's gotten a lot better. This year, number 55, though, so still kind of average in that category. Yeah, the pricing is better than yesterday. Yesterday, it felt like they had some elite tier iron players at numbers where they shouldn't have been at. And Max Homa here, I did fade him at 10.5 greens. He went under over there today. That could be a spot to go back for another fade. So, we mentioned a few other fades on there, like the Davis Riley one out there too. Like those kind of props I'm probably going to end up getting to, right? Just because we're not taking them here for the slip here in the live stream, right, doesn't mean I'm going to, avoid them altogether, right? There's a good chance that down the line, I end up entering them out there on the card. And this green and regulation average, I think there's a chance it goes down slightly, right? If they try and suck the moisture out of this golf course, they turn on those sub airs overnight, that sort of thing, I could see them really trying to impact the firmness of these greens. So Yeah, just like that Max Homer prop that I pointed out yesterday, that would be another spot I'd be willing to go back to. So we've got these three props in there. You could run it out there for a 3-leg, out there for 5x. My favorite two, though, that I'd probably end up entering for a 3x payout would be these two, right? The over on bogeys out there for Jaeger, right, ranking outside the top 130 last year in bogey avoidance. And then McCarty, who is a very accurate driver of the ball over there at 10, and he's projected below the field average out here over here in Prize Picks. So this is by far my favorite prop. If you're just looking for one golf prop to go out there and enter with another sport, if you're choosing between all of them, this would be the one I would go out there and take. But these other props, especially some of the other fades that we were pointing out, those are the ones, at least as of right this second, that I have my eye on. And, I'm not Nostradamus, right? We have no idea how the pin locations are going to look because they haven't even given to them they haven't even shown them to this at this point yet, right? They haven't even posted them until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. So there's nothing we can do until that point. So, I'm going to have a slip or two I probably enter tonight. Of course, guys, over there in the Patreon pages where you can find all of that. But for right now, these are the two props that we're going to take here in Prize Picks. So I do want to refresh this over here in Underdog to see if I have a little bit more to go through there. We're going to go through the entire Underdog board rather quickly. And then afterwards is when we're going to go through the matchup stuff. So I know we had somebody asking about that before. Give me about 5-10 minutes and we'll be on to the matchup stuff. Hovland 71.5, the minus 140 on Caesars. Yeah, so I was looking at some of those 71.5s. It's kind of like that Minwoo prop for strokes that we were looking at, right? He was also minus 130 out there in that direction. I do lean that way. I think course conditions, if I had to, gamble, over under compared to the scoring average today, I would definitely be on that over. You could look at Hovland, Minwoo for that sort of over. Shooting even par is not a bad score around Augusta National, right? Especially when they're running at 14s on the stimp meter, like what they have around here, when they're going to turn on the sub airs and trying to make it a little bit crunchier. Yeah, not against that one whatsoever. And yeah, he's on the same number in Prize Picks too. Yeah, another fade that you could add to your repertoire there. But let's look at Underdog rather quickly. And the issue with Underdog most cases is that they have multipliers on literally everything. Now, it doesn't mean that every multiplier that they're posting is going to be correct, though. So if we're careful, going through these different props on here, you might be able to find something that makes some sense. So looking through these, under on bogeys for Scotty would be something I'm looking at. That is 0.87x there. So kind of defeats the purpose on that sort of prop. A lot of these look copy and pasted from Prize Picks when it comes to the fairways and green lines, but it is good to know that we have that selection over here in Underdog. So a lot of the stuff we said over there for fairways and Underdog that you can use over here on this site, which is kind of nice. Yesterday, I don't think they actually posted every single category, so it's good to know that they did that this time around. Yeah, they have more birdie props posted. They do have the multipliers on them for guys like Xander and Bryson, though, right? So rather than having a 4 line over there on Prize Picks, he's at 4.5 and juiced way under over here on Underdog. 71.5 on a Xander. Yeah, makes sense, especially with that juice out there towards the under. 70.5 on John Rahm and juiced over. I tend to agree with those sort of lines. And again, maybe I side towards some of the fades that you have over here, but these lines are pretty much identical. And if they're not identical, it's just the juice that's different, right? They might have them at a slightly different number compared to what they have on Prize Picks, but the juice is why they have them at that different number. And the reason for that, by the way, is that Underdog, what they do, I can just tell with their pricing, is they go to the sportsbook odds, they copy and paste them out there into a spreadsheet, and then they do their pricing based off of that. Prize Picks does the same thing, but they don't have it automated, and they obviously don't have the multiplier aspect. They do, I guess, with the goblins and the demon props that they do, but they don't have that for golf. I don't know the reason why they don't have demon and goblin props over there. It'd be kind of nice if we had more selection, if they'd give us that sort of thing, but that's why they treat it a little bit differently with their projections. Let's look at Max Homa. So 72.5. Max Homa is just playing dog shit golf, and I knew he looked a little bit better today, but I'm always going to be looking for a Max Homa prop fade until he shows us otherwise. So it doesn't look like he has a line over here on Draftkings. Let me see if he's on Caesars. My guess is probably not. Draftkings normally has more guys posted than what they have over here on Caesars. But let's see. Max Homa. Yeah, nothing posted in terms of a strokes line. But even at 72.5, if I think it's going to play 1 over par, like a Max Homa fade would make sense at 72.5. So going through these lines, like even a Sanjay at 72, right? I'd be leaning on that out there for an over. I hate to be a hater. I hate to like be the bearer of bad news, but genuinely out here in almost every single case that I've seen so far, I'd be leaning on fades on every prop at like a handful that we've gone through so far. So it's that kind of slate until I'm proven otherwise. Like if we see that it is set up easier tomorrow morning, I already told you guys that I'm willing to adjust my process and go out there and maybe take some overs on birdies and maybe take a few unders out there on strokes. But I don't think it's going to be free or anything, right? You're going to have to be pretty selective about where you're going out there and taking. And based on what I'm seeing over here on the underdog side, guys, it is literally the exact same board. Like these fairway props, these green props are the exact same numbers that we have over there in Prize Picks. And especially for these lower tier guys that don't have the multipliers, it is the exact same projections that you have over there in Prize Picks. So everything we said over there on that site, you can kind of apply over here to Underdog. Like, for example, that Matt McCarty over on fairways is available at that same sort of number. So now let's look at a few matchup props. And what I normally like to do for the matchup side of things is really lean into the ball striking from the day prior. And I was looking at some of the ball striking stats before when you're going through a showdown process, but Hideki Matsuyama really sticks out from that category. But if we're trying to get a little bit sneakier out there with the player that we're taking, Michael Kim feels like a player that you should look for in a few different matchups. And then also Sam Burns. Sam Burns was really good from tee to green, but putting today, and it's kind of surprising, right? He's one of the best putters out there in the world. He kind of struggled out there in that category. So I would be looking at him out there for some of these matchups. Justin Thomas, same thing. He also really struggled over there on the greens. And who else? Yeah, probably those ones. So let's see what we have for some odds. So let's go over here to the matchup market, see who they're matched up against for tomorrow. I don't have all the pairings up in front of me, which I guess would make this easier, but I guess we know that for the future now. So Justin Thomas against Aaron Rai is minus 160. So I know we had the question before about Bryson out there versus Rose. Like as a parlay piece, maybe you can combine like some of these like heavily juiced props to go out there and find some props to go out there and enter. So a few other ones that I wanted to look at out there with the ball striking. Let's look at Sam Burns. And then who else was it? Michael Kim. Let's look at, Sam Burns and Michael Kim next. Burns versus Echeverria, and he's only minus 140. I might even eat that minus 140, especially because the shots gained metrics don't look that bad. And then the last one we wanted to go through over there was Michael Kim, who I'm guessing we're going to get plus money odds on this one, but I guess it depends on the opponent. He's going against Davis Riley. So if it was anyone else, we'd probably be getting plus money, which means I wouldn't bet that one over there at minus 165. So I would say that betting Sam Burns at minus 140 on his own is probably what I do there. And then with these other ones that are minus 160 or more odds, I'd probably combine them out there for like a 2-leg parlay. And if you can get that plus 150, Fanduel normally has slightly better odds out here on these matchups. So maybe check out Fanduel if you can go out there and parlay those two together and get closer to like plus 150, plus 160 odds out there on those sort of spots. So I'm not usually a huge fan of taking all that super juiced props, but I will do it out there in like a 2 to 3 leg parlay. So from the matchup perspective, it's all about trying to find guys that are ball striking the ball well, going against guys that maybe aren't shining as much in that category. So for example, Aaron Rai, it's not like he's been a terrible ball striker this week, but Justin Thomas outshining him there. Between Justin Rose and Bryson DeChambeau, Rose gaining like 7 strokes putting. Bryson DeChambeau, he hasn't been a terrible putter this week, but he's gaining a lot more substantially with that tee to green play. So that's the idea with the matchup market. You can extend that out there to every matchup that you're looking at, whether it's these 2 balls or over there and some head-to-heads over there on your sports books, over there on my Patreon page, and more specifically over there on the Discord channel out there either tonight or out there tomorrow morning. I'll be posting all the 3 balls and matchups that I'm playing it. On top of that, of course, guys, over there on the Patreon page, I'll be posting all the different prop slips that I'm entering out there for round number 3 on Prize Picks, Underdog, all of that exposure over there on the matchup markets for all my Patreon members. And to go ahead and join that, make sure to check it out in the link in the description of the video. And on top of just doing all this prop stuff that you guys see here in these live streams, like you were probably getting from some of the questions that we were getting before, I also do have all the DFS projections that I post on my Patreon too. So the DFS tier is how you can get all the showdown projections out there for rounds 3 and 4. I have the player pool tags out there with my player pool too, to not only just give you guys all the guys I'm using out there in my lineups, but also the reasoning behind it. So you can see on there, I've got ball striking poppers in my pool, short game regression candidates, some course history guys, also some high upside players that I'm using out there. And I'm going to zoom in here so I can just show you guys a few guys up here towards the top and not spoil the entire player pool. I posted this over there in my Twitter, so it's not like I'm leaking all that much over there. But towards the top, I really like this top end of the 9K range. So guys like a John Rahm, Korn Morikawa, they're guys I'm actively going after in my lineups. And then, yeah, some Scotty Scheffler up there towards the top end of the board. But on these projection sheets, I've got my projected ownership on there, player pool with those tags like we just went through, points, and all my modeling that you have for the main slate. So make sure to check out the Patreon page for all of that. And of course, for all of the prop stuff over there on Underdog and Prize Picks. So let me bring up the prop boards just for one last second here. Any last second questions, feel free to go ahead and throw those down in chat, because we're going to touch on those before we move on out there to the last props. Or the last round, I should say. My bad. You wanted to play Xander for an under at 71.5. Did I have any insight into it? And sorry if I was on him already. So yeah, 71.5 on Xander. If he was at 72 and we were getting like the even number there, I would probably consider taking an under. But course conditions wise, right, shooting 1 under par, Xander is probably like a 50-50 prospect for doing that. Like I think it's pretty adequate to have him at that sort of number. But if there's anyone I would take for an under, it would be somebody like Xander. Like ball striking stats today, if you guys didn't check him out already, he gained nearly 4 strokes on approach. He's a player that at the Valspar, round 4 of that event, he shot like 8 under par through his first 15 holes. He looks like he's back to his old self. So I don't want to talk you off of that, Shamari, because I really do like Xander for tomorrow. You missed out on a $50 10X with a 50% boost with some Rose stuff. Yeah, dude, I agree with you on that one. It was pretty tilting out there, but hopefully tomorrow can treat you a little bit nicer. We got Phil there, says, any shot anyone from Hovland or lower on the leaderboard can still win the green jacket. You have a Bryson outright, but you're a mush. I feel you on that, right? I've had a few outrights this year that have gone my way, but also a few that have gone a little bit wayward. Yeah, anyone from Hovland down, so you're looking at the -4s or worse. Yeah, so these guys at -3, -4, especially some of them that have had success around Augusta, they call it moving day for a reason. You shoot -5, -6, and they could definitely go out there and win the green jacket. So guys that kind of stand out to me are Colin Morikawa, also Hideki Matsuyama because of his past success here. And then maybe even a Patrick Reed, I guess, because of that same thing, right? He's had success around Augusta. Plenty of guys that are still viable there. What's going on? Derek says, you have $75 for round 3 showdown. Is it more profitable to do the 0.5 150 max or to do a few single entries? It's a good question, Derek. So I would base that on your player pool. If you have a lot of low-owned guys that you like for round 3 showdown, then do the 150 max. Do the 50-cent 150 max, spread all of your exposure out. But if you're going through your player pool, kind of figuring out the guys that you like with your process, and you figure out that there's some chalk that you like, I mean, that's what I actually am kind of feeling out there for round 3. I'm playing in more single entry, smaller field GPPs because I like guys that are like 10 to 15% owned. For example, Terrell Hatton is like 16% owned, maybe even like 20% owned for tomorrow. I'm going to be using him in some of those single entries and smaller field GPPs. Sam Burns, he's $6,500 out there in Showdown. Like, I'm using him even at over 10% ownership because he's just way too cheap. So I think it kind of depends on the players that you're looking at. If you've got some leverage, go for the GPPs. If not, then yeah, go for some of the smaller field stuff. What's a lower owned player to use for some leverage? That is your only question. Oh boy, you're asking me to give you a low owned dart play. I'm not just going to give you one, okay? I'm going to give you a few and I'm going to let you choose your favorite between them because I don't like the pressure of just being asked to give you one absolutely nuts play. The truth is down low, I take a scattershot approach. So I'm never that confident about like one guy that I'm taking towards the bottom. but a Michael Kim with his ball striking stats, that kind of stands out. A Tom Hoagie, too. He also really hit the ball well in approach, but couldn't gain anything over there with the putter. Probably one of those two. I do think that Tom Kim, Sam Burns, they're cheap, but they're also getting some ownership. That's the issue down there in that 6K range. It's probably, yeah, the Michael Kim, the Tom Hoagies of the world that are a little bit more of sleeper plays compared to those two. What's going on, Jay? Yeah, better late than never. Glad to have you here in the stream. And what's going on, Antonio? He said, do I see any value on the outright betting market? Great question. Let's go through that here before we get off this live stream together. So over here from the outright betting market, I'm just going to use Draftkings as the main thing that we're going through. So we just mentioned some of those -3s potentially being live to go out there and win. I think if you're going to bet anything at this point, you probably go far down the board because betting somebody at 3-4 to 1 to win is pointless at this point. I think if you're just going to bet one of the chalk favorites, you bet Scotty at +360. I'm not a proponent of that. I'm not going to do that myself, but if you're going to choose a piece of chalk, that is the piece of chalk that I would take. If you're trying to get a little bit more frisky about it, somebody like an O'Barrett 28 to 1, I don't know if that's a great number, but he's definitely somebody I could see making a charge and actually winning this thing. And then Morikawa would make sense, but he's there at 19 to 1. It just doesn't feel like a good enough number. Like at that point, I'd rather have O'Barrett 28 to 1 rather than a Morikawa over there at 19. So I don't know if I'd say that there's necessarily value here on the board, right? You'd want to look at some of the other books, make sure you're getting a comparable or at least a semi-comparable line to what you can get elsewhere. But yeah, this market, man, especially for like the Masters, it's such a high volume market. So many eyes out here on the last 2 rounds of a major championship. There's usually not going to be a lot of value on these sort of lines. And really, if you're going to take like anything just for a little bit of like a shits and giggles sort of bet, like maybe you look at a Sanjay at 90 to 1. Like I know he's not playing the greatest golf, but he's not that far from the lead. He's out there at like 90 to 1. Or even like a Xander. Like Xander, I know he's coming back from injury. He's been a little bit rusty, but he's like not that far from the top. He goes out there, he shoots like a -6 tomorrow, would be in prime position to go out there and be in contention. Those are the sort of like outright bets I'd be looking at this point. And there's nothing that really stuck out there that I'm going to go out there and, actually go out there and bet myself. But that's my thinking, man. These markets, especially out there for the Masters, they do a pretty good job at taking all the value out of it. But that's all I've got out there for the live stream, guys. Best of luck out there with all of your exposure for tomorrow. I've got to go out there and get to some of my prop exposure out there for round number 3. So for all of that, make sure to check out the Patreon page for that. Every single step as I'm actually entering it myself will be posted over there for my Patreon members, as well as for the spreadsheet over there on the DraftKings side, which is posted over 2 hours ago out there for my Patreon members. So not only do they get the most accurate ownership projections out there for Showdown every slate, but also my projections in a very timely manner. I'm very proud. I'm very on top of getting my projections out as quickly as humanly possible, right? And rather than waiting around the entire night to go out there and get your analysis, right? An hour, maybe an hour and a half after the slate ends, you're going to have that over there on my Patreon page. So if you like timely projections, like projections that are actually accurate, where I do back testing, they make sure that my stuff is actually holding up. Make sure to check out the Patreon for all of that, as well as all the different pieces of betting exposure that I'm getting to. That's all I've got, guys. Getting late over here on the East Coast. Hopefully, moving day can treat us nicely over there on our exposure, and we can see ourselves a top tier winner over here at the Masters.